Yoga.
Welcome to the Institute for Personal Development, Kriya Yoga Ashram, where total consciousness is the new frontier.
Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices to initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
I'm doing great today, too. Thanks for asking. And we'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Today on the Voice of Yoga, we will talk about the statement found by Ramana Maharishi: the greatest obstacle to enlightenment is getting past your delusion that you are not already enlightened. End of the quote. In this podcast, we will explore the function of a divine metaphysical system to induce enlightenment. Listen as we discuss the possibility of the delusion you are enlightened, as is suggested in Revelation in the Bible. Looks like a lamb, speaks like a dragon. Not all that glitters is gold. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. Join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and be clear. So the title of today's podcast is Delusion as Obstruction to Truth. What do we mean by obstructions to truth?
Though divine mind is omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, mortal mind seems to display the same characteristics. The main difference is one is real and the other isn't. The only thing that is real is spirit, and the entire mental material illusion is unreal or a delusion, a hypnotic state, a mental image about what is real. I was inspired by something Mary Baker Eddy wrote in Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, page 191, 4-7, and I'll read it. As mortals give up the delusion that there is more than one mind, more than one God, man in God's likeness will appear. And this eternal man will include in that likeness no material element. End of quote. The implication of the statement by Ramana Maharishi, all that is necessary is to awake from the illusion, and I'm free. And in truth, this is correct. Awake thou that sleeps. And we have something here from Ephesians 5:7-14, and I'll read that. Be not ye therefore partakers with them, for ye were sometimes darkness, but now are ye light in the Lord. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, proving what is acceptable unto the Lord, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. For it is a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them in secret. But all things that are reproved are made manifest by the light. For whatsoever doth make manifest is light. Wherefore he saith, Awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. End of quote. So I think today we'll talk a little bit about what is meant by delusion, by hypnotism, by this idea of being asleep. I really like what we say in Kriya Yoga, awake, asleep, alive, and dead. There's no difference. The more you drill down with this, you start to see that if it's mental and material, it's erroneous.
And I like that quote that you had said about Mary Baker Eddy from Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. As mortals give up the delusion that there is more than one mind, more than one God, man in God's likeness will appear. That certainly sounds like something we all would want to aspire to become, right?
Yeah, and what we're learning is we don't become it. We come out of the belief we're not it. It's just like Ramana Maharishi says, but it sounds so simple when you say it that way. But what we'll find is it's not quite that easy.
So Swami, you said it's not that easy. So what is it that we have to do?
Well, it can also be said the greatest obstacle to enlightenment is getting past your delusion that you are already enlightened. It's very easy to think you are spiritual while still living out from the mortal mind, under the law of karma, even showing more of the pleasures and profits of the world. But you're going to die in your sin. Sin meaning missing the mark. As long as we believe in two powers, as long as we believe we are a finite mortal being, then we're in the trap. And whether we realize it or not, it is our belief in this false sense of existence that is keeping us from knowing the truth. But all of the forces are in favor of the false sense of existence. Like we say, fear is a defense mechanism for this false sense of existence. Then you also have this idea of human intelligence, personal sense, human will. It seems very real. And then the final obstruction really is overcoming this world. The idea of the son of perdition, corporeal sense functioning in human consciousness. And until we figure all of that out, it makes it that much more difficult because we've got all of these material moorings keeping us tethered to this false sense of existence.
Yeah, I really like what you just read, what Paul wrote in Ephesians, "Awake thou that sleepest." He's talking about us humans, and he's telling us to arise from the dead and Christ shall give thee light. It kind of sounds like there is a progression here. We have to wake up, we have to rise, and then we can become with our divinity.
Yeah, and what we really have to understand is what is meant by the Christ, because the Christ is the saving aspect of truth. What will make the divine creation comprehensive to human consciousness? And so this is why we want to talk about a divine metaphysical system, a way of inducing the birth of Christ in consciousness by employing strategies. Most of the world is sitting around and they're waiting for Jesus to come and take them in on his demonstration. But we've been waiting for thousands of years now, and it's not happening. And so learning, it's not an external event. It is an inner experience. And there are things we can do to facilitate this developmental process.
So before we can do that, I think we have to realize we are in a delusion. Tell us what signs we should look for if we think that we're deluded from being enlightened.
One of the things you'll notice is I've heard countless number of people saying that I'm spiritually awakened. I am spiritual. And yet their lives seem like they're having a lot of problems, health problems, financial problems, relationship problems, yet they think they're spiritually enlightened. So the first order of business is to understand spirit is perfect. It's whole, complete. There's nothing that ever has to be added to or taken away. So if you're not resting in the fruits of the Spirit, the peace, love, joy, goodness, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, patience, temperance of the Spirit, the way you monitor your practice and your life is you look at the testimony of your senses. Consciousness is experience. It's impossible to be conscious of divine truth and be having any type of problem. Test what it is that you're doing. This is one of the things I admire so much about Christian Science. Mary Baker Eddy is really the only one I know of that puts healing on the table. If you're not demonstrating divine law with scientific certainty, you have to know you are not conscious of divine truth. Divine truth in consciousness resolves things into thoughts and exchanges the objects of sense for the divine idea. This is why the message of the Christ was, heal the sick, reform sinner, raise the dead. Spirit is a demonstrable principle, and it testifies with deeds, not words.
So my question from the Ephesians 5:10 verse, proving what is acceptable unto the Lord, what does that mean?
Yeah, for me, the purpose of an incarnation is to serve Spirit. It is to glorify the Creator by being that place where the divine principle expresses itself through you. And the way we do this is by not interfering with it, by making your mind an avenue of awareness so that divine mind can do its knowing in your awareness. And if you do this or interfere with it with human will and personal sense, divine mind is the only thing that thinks in terms of the absolute. Like Mary Baker Eddy said, a body rendered pure by mind, by divine mind. When we do things with human will and personal sense, we're doing it with thought, which is dualistic. And it's under karmic law, driven by the belief in two powers. I like the way Mary Baker Eddy said it, to think with God as God. And that's really what we are aspiring to do in this practice of Kriya Yoga.
You did state earlier that all that is necessary is to awake from the illusion and I am free. So can you dive a little bit deeper with that for us?
Yeah, like I say, it's not just a slick phrase, I am awake, I am spiritual. It's really a process that we initiate. And it begins with born again of spirit. Matter and mind come together with new information. We have to separate from being individualized by the world mind and then internalize the invisible, intangible omnipresence as your new symbol for validation. In order to feel connected to something that's pure, powerful, sacred, dependable, and if we don't initiate this process, if we aren't employing the strategies, and you're just trying to do this with a self-made system or with some human advice, you may fall short of what it is intended to do, which is, in Kriya Yoga, we call it liberation, freedom. Jesus called it know the truth and it makes you free. Free from the belief in mortality, free from being under the government of karmic law, the belief in two powers, and the promise of eternal life. But mortal mind must go through 3 stages of growth, and your first stage is overcoming the fear. Born again of spirit, you have a new symbol for validation. Then you have to develop human intelligence so that you have developed the faculty that will enable you to make conscious choices. And then finally, overcome this world. And then you can walk reason through the open door of revelation. But for me, it's a lot more than just some academic declaration that I'm enlightened.
We're going to pause right here to hear a word from our sponsor. Listeners, we'll be back with you in just a few moments. Kriya Yoga Asana class is a module fitting into the master plan, leading the practitioner to the experience of total consciousness. by attuning the mind-body complex to the divine idea, a system of exercises designed to use the physical appearance to determine individual level of consciousness and degree of awareness, starting with the process of lengthening and strengthening muscles to bring bones into the position of internal support. We educate thought up to spiritual apprehension, because when spirit is cause, it calls into expression the beauty of holiness, making creation perfect. Mountain pose may not bring you truth in consciousness, but truth in consciousness must bring mountain pose. Visit the website www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste. Welcome back. For those who are just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. We have a passage from Herb Fitch's Revelation of St. John from his class 13a, and I'm going to read it. And so self will finally discovers its concept of success was fine up to a point, and then it turns out to be the delusion of a lifetime. It isn't the success of spiritual realization. It isn't the success of the birth of the Christ in you. It's the success that cannot walk through the valley of the shadow of death, fearing no evil. But now, with the new inner impulse, with the opening of a realization of your spiritual selfhood, comes the desire to seek not my way, not my will, and we are lifted into the great rhythm of the spiritual universe. End of this passage. Swami, there's a lot of things we can get out of this. Where should we start?
Well, like we say, there's only one way this whole thing goes right, and there's an infinite number of ways that it can go wrong. So whatever it is that you're doing, you want to start right from the onset is looking for the coincidence between the human and the divine. If you're not getting divine qualities in your external experiences, then you have to challenge what it is that you're doing. And what we've learned is when you do that, you want to be able to recognize, am I failing the practice or is the practice failing me? And if you don't have what I consider to be a divine metaphysical system, a tried and true system you can rely on, then you might not be able to demonstrate divine law with what it is that you're doing, because a lot of it doesn't go far enough.
I like what Herb says. To be lifted into the great rhythm of the spiritual universe, we have to have this desire to seek thy will and not my will. What do you think about it?
Oh, exactly. We have to have a willingness to give up the belief in the false sense of existence. And it's one of the reasons why Mary Baker Eddy called finite good the wolf in sheep's clothing. It's a much bigger obstruction to enlightenment when things are going really well in the mental material experience. When somebody is sick, suffering, there's lack, limitation, they have a willingness to at least challenge what they're doing. But when things are going good in the outside world, like we say, who wants to jump out of a perfectly good airplane? And so a good divine metaphysical system is really here to get you to attain your goal. The idea of glorifying the Creator, serving the divine principle, and then giving you a pretty good understanding of what's that going to look like when I'm doing that. Because being spiritual is not really deprivation. It's not abstaining from the pleasures and profits of the human experience. It's indulging in an inexhaustible resource, in what is pure, powerful, sacred. And the peace, love, and joy that comes with this becomes its motivator. Sense-level pleasures lose their appeal once you have tasted the divine.
We have a soundbite from Gilbert Carpenter's Mary Baker Eddy, Her Spiritual Footsteps from chapter 70.
And I'll play it.
Man will never lay up treasure in heaven, so long as he believes that he has ample treasure on earth. He will never seek the true sense of health, so long as he believes that he has it in matter. Therefore, we must conclude that the greatest enemy of man's spiritual growth is that human harmony and peace, which causes man to believe that he does not need recourse to the divine, because he already has all that he needs. Under this mesmerism, man is preyed upon by a human destiny that marks him for death and extinction, which is covered up under an illusion of physical health and prosperity, an illusion that is really a condition of sickness and lack. The opposite is camouflaged to appear genuine. Job had no spiritual growth under this delusion of health and prosperity until truth unfolded to him how poor and sick he really was. Thus was he driven to seek his true sense of family, money, friends, and health in God. The argument thus far contends that the mesmerism of human harmony keeps man unconscious of his bondage, and that the uncovering of this mesmerism through Christian science makes him conscious of it. He then sees the counterfeit to be what it really is, the opposite of the real. At that point, he should not desire to go back and let that mesmerism once more possess him, but to look things squarely in the face and develop that spiritual understanding which will lead him to his freedom.
So Gilbert Carpenter really lays it out on the line for us when he says, the mesmerism of human harmony keeps man unconscious of his bondage. What do you think?
Yeah, well, we're hypnotized. And like I said, all the forces are against us. This idea that we think fear is a good thing because it could save my life. Only what we're calling life isn't life at all. Life is hid with Christ in God. And once we have better leadership and a better way of educating people in how to become that place where divine mind functions in your awareness, we're no longer struggling with all of the common things we seem to get tangled up in. Once you start to understand that it's not abstaining, it's indulging. To be in tandem with something that's pure, powerful, and sacred and dependable, enabling you to walk in the kingdom of heaven on earth. And then, like Gilbert Carpenter said also, he should not desire to go back and let the mesmerism once more possess him. If we don't take the necessary steps, the idea of rebirthing the body and spirit, you're always going to have this underlying unconscious urge or pattern or desire to go back. But once you fulfill the necessary requirements for you to initiate the developmental process and you bring mortal mind through these stages of growth, the thought of going back is non-existent. It's such an upgrade. It is when we haven't gone the distance and we have these lingering feelings and concerns, all the guilt, shame, anger, resentment, blame, emptiness, and boredom that most of us are struggling with disappears in the light of divine truth.
And also, like Gilbert Carpenter says, develop the spiritual understanding which will lead to freedom. And gosh, you've been teaching and saying that for years.
Yeah, if we don't develop the faculty that enables us to perceive the divine creation, and we continue to try and do this with the mind that can't bring forth the divine image, then you're managing your problems. It's not freedom from the belief. The miracle is awaiting the realization of the force within that eliminates death. This is big stuff. And if we aren't getting the coincidence between the human and the divine, then challenge what it is that you're doing.
We have a passage from Joel Goldsmith from his work, The Infinite Way, Putting on Immortality, and I'll read it. Let us begin with the understanding that our world is not an erroneous one, but rather that the universe in which we live is the realm of reality about which man entertains a false concept. The work of bringing health and harmony into our experience is not then getting rid of or even changing a mortal material universe, but correcting the finite concept of our existence. End of the passage. Swami, your thoughts about this?
Yeah, we see what isn't here, and we're blind to what is here. And once you are able to separate the wheat from the tares, and you understand the difference between mental material conjecture and spiritual truth, the difference between thought and idea, then you can sow to the spirit, and accepting and living in the knowledge of the immortal, infinite self will seem to take care of what seems to be a finite mortal sense of self on the planet. We are to know that we are Christ, not in the world, while appearing as forms in the world. And all of this goes from being an academic statement to direct experiential knowing as our identity shifts from a mental material basis to a spiritual basis. As our thinking shifts from sense level awareness to spiritual understanding, we learn how to stop thinking with 5 corporeal senses and start knowing with 7 spiritual senses. And what we find is we're not changing anything. We're revealing how things always are. The mental material concept is not the divine creation. God is running a perfect universe. But like I said, what we're looking at is not the divine creation. We see this mental material concept, and as long as we continue to react to it and be fooled by it, then we're deluded. We're hypnotized.
So explain to us from Revelation, the Bible looks like a lamb, speaks like a dragon. What should we know about that?
Well, things aren't always what they appear to be. Not all that glitters is gold. The testimony of the corporeal senses isn't your best barometer, especially when you understand how it's working. It's not pure. Under material law, for every action, there is an equal and an opposite reaction. So even all of our good intentions, all of our good activities have a complementary, unmanifested bad part that comes with it. And this is why they talk about in the Bible the idea of pure of heart, or what Mary Baker Eddy said, a body rendered pure by mind. And when she says mind, she means divine mind, because the human mind is impure thought, because it's a mix. And part of this whole thing is learning how to control how we think, and then eventually stop thinking, and then graduate to the point where we let divine mind do its knowing in our awareness, what she called to think with God as God, because it's the only way to bring forth the divine image.
So we thank you for your insights for today's episode titled Delusion as Obstruction to Truth. Listeners, be sure to visit the website www.ipdtransform.com. On any of the pages, as you scroll down, you'll see several buttons there that you could press that would further your understanding. Swami, any final thoughts about today's podcast?
Well, I would like to encourage people to join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and be clear. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton, along with Swami Jayananda, signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga realization. Namaste.